I'm sure we can make a deal, and I'm here to help on that. I cannot deal in the name of the European Union. My goal would be invite President Trump to pay an official visit to Italy and understand if there's a possibility when he comes to organize also such a meeting with Europe. For I think the best way is that we simply speak frankly about the needs that every one of us has and find ourselves in the middle. For that's useful for all. I really, somebody calls me such a Western nationalism. I don't know if it is the right word, but I'm sure that together we are stronger. And I have to find a way, I'm here to find the best way to make us both stronger on the two shores of the Atlantic.
Well, the countries they have come a-courting as it's related to the Trump tariffs. The latest leader to visit the White House to try to strike a deal is Italy's Giorgia Meloni. And she said emphatically, I am here to make a deal, despite what some of the reporters were lobbing in questions at her. There at the White House for us is Kara Castronova. She didn't quite make it in the room today. You almost got in there, and that would have been a fun one to be in there for because obviously Giorgia Meloni and Trump have a good rapport, right?
No, for sure. They're definitely allies. A lot of people look at Giorgia Meloni as the person that's going to improve relations, obviously, for Europe. With President Trump, he seems to really like her a lot, gives her a lot of accolades in the room, and really respects her. I think she's leaving soon because behind me, and I really can't see, but it seems like people are gathering. It looks like her motorcade is set to leave shortly. A lot of journalists over there gathered by that door where the president had met her earlier. So that's what's happening now. They just came out of the Oval Office. They had a luncheon where they were talking about tariffs and Ukraine, from what I understand, and a number of other things. There were some interesting moments in there where a journalist, and maybe you could identify who this is, Emerald, was called fake by the president. So please check out this clip.
You also said that you're in no rush. Americans are seeing prices rise. They're seeing it on their bills. How long can they expect that pain to last?
So they've already seen it get much better because if you were truthful, which you're not, I know you very well, you have gasoline that hit $1.98 yesterday in a couple of states. You have gasoline's way down. The price of oil has dropped substantially. The price of groceries are substantially down. The price of eggs, when I came in, they hit me with eggs. I just got there. I was here for 1 week and they started screaming at me, eggs have gone through the roof. I said, I just got here. I was there for 7 days and I hear that eggs have gone through the roof before I got
there. I'll take, who is Jackie Heinrich with faux news for 500, Kara? Jackie Heinrich.
Okay, you know better than me, but possibly that was her. But yes, that the president, and then he further on in the clip also calls her fake again. And it's, it's interesting always to hear the president get these journalists getting on his nerves in the Oval Office, which is why hopefully I get in there one day because I am not fake news, obviously. And I think that, I will ask questions that the president will like, and not because I agree with him on everything, because I do not, but just more meaningful questions are the ones that they're putting out there that, in my opinion, are leftist propaganda. So, and there was some other interesting moments as well. One where he mentioned Jerome Powell earlier today. The president, announced that he wanted him to step down. Obviously, he's getting on his nerves. He wants him to bring down the interest rates. And this is something that's controversial. So again, this was mentioned in the Oval Office by the president. So take a listen to this clip.
And they said the attack is what?
That you waved off an Israeli plan to attack Iranian nuclear facilities.
I wouldn't say waved off. I'm not in a rush to do it because I think that Iran has a chance to have a great country and to live happily without death. And I'd like to see that. That's my first option. If there's a second option, I think it would be very bad for Iran. And I think Iran is wanting to talk. I hope they're wanting to talk. It's going to be very good for them if they do, and I'd like to see Iran thrive in the future, do fantastically well. I know the Iranian people; they're incredible people. Always have been very smart, very energetic, very successful people, and I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt anybody. I really don't. But Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. It's, pretty simple. It's really simple.
Well,
All
that
right,
was
Kara,
an
that was
important
exactly
clip as well.
Ron Paul,
Yes. It was an important clip, too, that I wanted to actually bring up later. President Trump speaking on Iran and obviously his desire not to blow people up. Hopefully that's not what he wants. And he's said many times in the past that he would rather people be alive than dead. So that's just a testament there, I think, to that and talking about Iran in that meeting that just happened. So your thoughts, Emerald, on what the president said, because I know that this is a topic that you talk a lot about.
Yeah, look, this is a move away from where I think even some of Trump longtime loyalists had thought he might be. There was, leading into Inauguration Day, there was some serious speculation in the foreign policy circles that were pro-America First foreign policy circles that Trump may be leaning towards strikes on Iran. So I think this comes as a surprise, especially for some of those people he did put in the administration. I think that's why you might be seeing some of the personnel shifts.
Right.
It's so interesting, Kara, having Meloni there today. This is so different from a Biden presidency, right? Because there are important meetings at the White House. There are important meetings overseas. I call this meetings galore. There's important meetings happening at every level of the Trump administration right now. And of course, the Iran talks as they head into this weekend, being some of the most important. Also, we had special envoy Steve Witkoff meetings in Russia over the last few days. We're going to break that down in more detail with Dimitri Simes next, Kara. But also, speaking of meetings, and I don't know if you happen to see this because I almost missed it, but apparently J.D. Vance, who was in that luncheon with the vice president, who was in that luncheon with Meloni as well, is actually headed to Rome and to Italy this weekend, specifically Rome, to take East Day. So that's great. It's obviously, this is all very coordinated. You have Meloni here today and J.D. Vance will be headed there this weekend, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an important ally. And it should be interesting for J.D. Vance being there for Easter weekend, obviously in Rome. That would be absolutely magical, but definitely strategic. And, yes, he was in that luncheon meeting as well. And like I mentioned earlier, it looks like I'm trying to peer over my shoulder, Emerald. They might be taking off any time now. We might get a glimpse, but I don't know, within the next couple of minutes of the Prime Minister of Italy taking off behind me. So it's always exciting to be here on days like this and to just get to witness this. It's obviously historical. She's an interesting Prime Minister. I did a lot of reading on her. She's very, much to the right of Trump, actually, very much a right-wing populist in Europe and really the first right-wing Prime Minister and also the first female as well since Mussolini. So she's very interesting and fascinating. If anyone wants to take a deep dive into her, I think she's fascinating. And I agree with her on a lot of things, but not all. Definitely not all. She's a little bit more socially conservative than I am. I'm a little more socially liberal, I would say. But she's definitely somebody that's interesting. And I would have loved to have been in that Oval Office today. Yeah. And I'll look forward to getting a glimpse of her as she drives by right behind me in her motorcade. I don't know if we still have that Jerome Powell clip to pull up, Emerald, if you want to play that really quick, because this is a story that's obviously developing. Trump asking the Fed, the individual in charge of the Fed, to step down. It's really very interesting, and I don't know how much sway the president really has with that. From what I understand, there's different ways that the president can sort of impose his power and get the Fed to step down, but they're technically not part of the government. So that should be a really interesting conversation and really interesting to see how that plays out. So if you want to take a listen to this clip of Jerome Powell, and it's really brief, just President Trump mentioning again how it's time that he might step down and, he's not doing a good job. Take a listen.
You also said that you're in no rush. Americans are seeing prices rise. They're seeing it on their bills. How long can they expect that pain to last?
So they've already seen it get much better, because if you were truthful, which you're not, I know you very well, you have gasoline that hit $1.98 yesterday in a couple of states. You have gasoline's way down. The price of oil has dropped substantially. The price of groceries are substantially down. The price of eggs, when I came in, they hit me with eggs. I just got there. I was here for 1 week and they started screaming at me, eggs have gone through the roof. I said,
just stop it.
She's leaving.
All
Tell her
right,
stop, stop.
Kara.
Oh, look, she's leaving actually right behind me right now. Sorry about that clip.
That's so nice.
It's
That's okay.
okay.
And you know
But
what's
the good
nice? It
news
bought us
is
more
the prime
time to see
minister,
her. Yeah, to see
right,
her, see
leaving.
Georgia Meloni leave.
So
You
I'm going to
know
step out
what,
of the shot. You could check it out right
Kara?
here. She's leaving. Ciao.
Let's wave at her.
There she goes. Yeah, there goes Georgia Meloni.
A little,
And
a
obviously
little
the
known,
press.
a little known fact, Kara, is that Georgia Meloni for a while was watching this show, The Absolute Truth. She sent
Oh,
us
I
word she had
believe
been
it.
watching it for a while, so I'm sure she's too busy now. But it was in the lead up, to her election, so that was really, quite cool for us to hear that. And I remember standing there before when I was a White House correspondent. President Duda of Poland at the time was leaving one of these bilateral meetings, and I had happened to have been chosen twice during a joint presser. Both times he'd come to the White House previously, I had been chosen to ask him a question in the joint presser. So I was a familiar face to him. And as he was rolling by it behind me, and while I was on camera and I turned around, he waved at us when I was on Newsmax. So that was a fun
Oh,
moment. These are
wow.
little moments,
Yeah,
you're
that's
right.
nice.
It's nice.
Yeah, they are fun moments. They are definitely. And there's always protesters outside generally awaiting any type of foreign leader. I think, they look at it as a chance to be heard. So it's
Yeah.
always kind of exciting to be here at the White House when these foreign leaders come in, especially actually as they come in. And as you know, Emerald, the military's here holding the flags of the 50 states lined up on this driveway, and they do all the pomp and ceremony. So it's really kind of cool to see. The first couple times I was here when I saw the prime minister of India, and that was my first day here at the White House, and I remember walking in and seeing the military here with all of the flags, and at the end they had the flag of India and the flag of the United States at the end of the driveway. Then President Trump came out and shook his hand. It was sort of like, wow, oh my God, this is my first day at the White House, and I'm getting to see something this special. So it's pretty magical being here.
And it also does, it raises a sense of your pride for your country when you see these kind of ceremonial events. Kara Castronova, thank you so much for your reporting. Excellent wrap up of that meeting. Very important comments from particularly President Trump out of that meeting. And we're going to expound on that in just a moment, dive deeper with Dimitri Simes. Thank you, Kara Castronova.
Thank you, Emerald. Have a great show.
And speaking of major moves that are happening in the diplomatic world as we come close to the close of Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, which we have been covering inside and out for you, his special envoy is meeting with leaders in Paris along with Secretary of State Marco Rubio to discuss the prospects of peace in Europe. But there's more to it than just settling the Ukraine war with Russia, as Trump wages a massive trade war, which was the topic of conversation between he and Meloni, notably against China. He is forcing the world to completely rearrange the economic and trade order to make it more favorable to the United States. Now, part of that plan is to try to peel away Russia's and the relationship between Russia and China. And here's what geopolitical analyst Gregory Copley had to say on our show yesterday about this very prospect.
There's nothing which the Russians have their heart in. And frankly, President Trump is doing with Moscow today what Richard Nixon did with Beijing in 1972, pulling these two Eurasian powers apart and dealing with them separately. And China is basically destroying itself as now helped by the US trade deals and the like. So essentially we'll be left with Russia standing as a fairly successful state in the next few years, trading with the West and trading with the rest of the world.
And part of that movement of pulling Russia away from China is making nice with the Islamic Republic of Iran, if you can believe it. My next guest, the Moscow-based journalist and host of New Rules Geography, a very popular geopolitics podcast, said this recently on his Twitter page. He said, quote, "Message to Trump, don't think you can divide Russia and Iran. The two have just ratified a strategic partnership deal that can potentially reshape global trade, finance, and energy markets." And Dimitri joins us now from Moscow to discuss the latest on all of these movements, plus react to some of those statements, particularly on Iran, that Trump just made in the Oval Office. We're so glad you could be with us today, Dimitri. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
The topic of the tariff war with China particularly came up in that meeting with Giorgia Meloni. I suggested in my open to you that there is a rearranging, right, an economic rearranging, a trade rearranging based on this Trump tariff trade policy. So I'd love to get your stance, okay, as someone in Russia that covers the Kremlin, covers Moscow deeply. What did you think about what Greg Copley, another respected geopolitical analyst, had to say about the decoupling of Russia and China?
Well, that's not happening right now. Let's get from the very beginning, right? He talked about the United States pulling Russia away from China. At the moment, the United States is still sending weapons to Ukraine, providing intelligence to Ukraine. The United States is still providing political support to Ukraine. But even if we set Ukraine aside, Donald Trump earlier this week extended sanctions against Russia. So how can we talk about the United States pulling Russia away from China when the United States is not willing to do business with Russian companies, with Russia as a whole? Overall, I think that Russia is not going to be willing to accept any sort of arrangement where they have to give up ties with China. China is simply too important for us. It's our largest trading partner. It's our largest neighbor. And a lot of people in Russia are looking at the showdown that's happening right now. And they want to see how it plays out. Because it's quite clear that we'll get an understanding who is the real global superpower. Is it the United States still, or has China already surpassed it? And I have to be honest with you, Emerald, a lot of people are inclined to think that China is going to prevail. So they're not in a rush to drop relations with China. That being said, I don't want to come off as a doomer on your program. So there is very strong interest in broadening Russia's relationship because Russians don't want to put all of our eggs into a single basket. We don't want to be fully dependent on China, which is why we're developing relations with India, Malaysia, Vietnam, and other countries. And there's very strong interest from the Kremlin on the most senior levels to have an economic restart with the United States. Last month, actually, sorry.
Well, no, go ahead and finish your, then I'll interject because I do think it's important what you're saying.
Not a lot of people covered it, but President Vladimir Putin earlier this month actually proposed a joint rare earth metal venture between the United States and Russia. He said that US and Russian companies can come together to help excavate and develop Russian rare earth metals. I want to remind your audience members, they probably don't know this, but Russia has the third largest supply of rare earth minerals in the world after China and Vietnam. It has many times more rare earth minerals than Ukraine does. And a lot of Ukraine's so-called rare earth minerals are now under Russia's control. Additionally, Russia has signaled that they're willing to do joint projects with Elon Musk in space. And, earlier this week, there have been some unconfirmed reports that Russia has even offered to start buying Boeing airplanes again. So Russia is very much open to business with the United States.
Well, and that is what I'm hearing from you. And I think it would probably be smart on the part of Russia not to put their eggs all in China's basket because, I was a little bit surprised. I didn't know how initially this tariff policy would go off with China. I talked to people in China, I talked to people in Europe, I talked to people here. And it's been very interesting over the last few weeks. The general consensus, Dimitri, has been that the United States does have a significant amount of leverage over China's, let's be honest, their economy, though you don't see a lot of coverage of this, has been struggling over the last few years, more so than maybe years past. And also Xi Jinping sounds like to me, based on sources in China, he's kind of having to struggle to maintain his power now. And talking about this reset with the U.S., I know you sound very frustrated about the fact that Trump upped sanctions, also continuing to supply Ukraine. But it's been very interesting to see Envoy Witkoff and how he has responded to his meetings in Russia. In fact, let's take a listen to a clip from those meetings. Listen.
We might be on the verge of something that would be very, very important for the world at large. On top of that, I believe there's a possibility to reshape the Russian-United States relationship through some very compelling commercial opportunities that I think give real stability to the region too.
He sounds hopeful.
Yeah. To be clear, I didn't want to make it sound as though I'm particularly frustrated. I'm just saying that, you know, we have a long way to go before we can talk about some sort of grand U.S.-Russian alliance. Returning to Steve Witkoff, people in Moscow have been very impressed with him because even though he's not a professional diplomat, he gets Russia. And as I understand, he was one of the first foreign investors actually to come into Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. So he's not a stranger to Russia. And he knows how to, you know, talk to Russians. You know, he's not an ideological fanatic like Antony Blinken, like Victoria Nuland, like some of the former people that Russia has gotten used to dealing over the past 25, 30 years. He's a businessman, and he thinks in terms of specific, you know, economics, pluses and minuses. And on the Russian side, you have a lot of business-friendly technocrats, and most particularly Russian President Putin's special economic envoy Kirill Dmitriev, and they seem to have a really good chemistry together.
Well, yeah, a lot of people didn't know that business background that you noted of Witkoff investing in Russia in the past, but also I think that Witkoff has actually ruffled some feathers with his willingness to, or his seeming willingness to work with what is seen to be hostile powers. In fact, not only is it as it relates to Russia, but also Iran, Dimitri, because Witkoff, I mean, he's basically in hot water with the neocon foreign policy establishment here in the United States for saying this about allowing Iranians to keep highly enriched uranium to up to 3.7%. Let's take a quick listen to this and I'll get your reaction.
The conversation with the Iranians will be much about two critical points. One, enrichment. As you mentioned, they do not need to enrich past 3.67%. In some circumstances, they're at 60%. In other circumstances, 20%. That cannot be. And you do not need to run, as they claim, a civil nuclear program where you're enriching past 3.67%. So this is going to be much about verification on the enrichment program and then ultimately verification on weaponization.
Our resident geopolitical analyst, Brandon Weichert, broke news last weekend, Dimitri, that Witkoff and Trump are actually trying to get Russia to lead the effort to denuclearize Iran, specifically to take on Iran's highly enriched uranium, which is causing problems with Tehran. So is that a possibility? Could it be that Russia would be leading the effort to denuclearize Iran in conjunction with the U.S.? That seems like a pretty far step away also based on the other items you mentioned. We got 1.5 minutes for this.
Yeah, so I think Russia's uniquely positioned to help lead this negotiation process because Russia has incredibly close relations with Iran, not just politically, but also increasingly militarily and economically. And Russia helped support the initial GCPOA negotiations back in 2015. So they're very familiar with this issue. They have good rapport with the Iranian side. So theoretically, if we're able to get a resolution on Ukraine, that can help create cascading effects for Russia to play the role of middleman in U.S.-Iranian talks.
Dimitri Simes, thank you so much for joining us today to break this down more. Lots of meetings happening, even though it's a holiday weekend. Marco Rubio is headed to Paris, so Iran, Russia will definitely be big topics. Ukraine conversation there, so we'll have a lot more to talk about in the near future. Thank you so much, Dimitri.
Thank you. Take care.
And speaking of the Easter holiday weekend, as I noted, Vice President J.D. Vance is set to go to Italy. We'll talk more about that trip, preview with Mr. Mike McCormick, the former stenographer, White House stenographer, in my 8 o'clock show tonight. We're also going to be more eyes on Europe as that Romanian presidential redo election is set for just a matter of days, only about 2 weeks away on May 1st. The new populist candidate, conservative candidate, now that they pulled Colin Georgescu from the ballot, George Simeon, will also join us tonight at 8 p.m. And just a little programming note for you, since we are in Holy Week. Tomorrow, Good Friday, we will be taking off. We'll be playing some wonderful entertainment for you, but we will see you back on Monday. I hope you have a blessed Good Friday and Easter Sunday, and we'll see you tonight at 8 p.m.